Hello.
Hi, welcome.
We're just going to we're going to wait until 11 to kind of start into the bulk of everything. But you guys can keep your videos on for this if you want. You can keep them off. It's really up to you guys.
Kari, I'm gonna need you to, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sweet.
Perfect. Are you in presentation mode for it? Or are you oh, you are? Okay,
I'm in like the presenter view or.
Okay, I see.
That way I can see you and I can see them.
Right.
Or I mean,
hi, welcome. Yeah, that's fine, Bri.
Okay, cool.
Hi. I'm so glad we have so many people today.
I know, I'm really excited.
This is so much better than our first couple.
Love it.
How's everyone doing today? Kind of chatter beforehand.
I woke up to a fire alarm, so that was fun.
Oh no.
Oh, interesting.
What a way to start your morning.
I know, really.
Was it super early or was it a little later in the day or like in the morning?
No, it was literally like an hour ago, so I was awake, but like I was still just kind of like laying in my bed not doing anything. So I mean, it wasn't bad.
Right.
It got me motivated.
There you go. There you go. We'll give it until about 11:05 or so before we start into the presentation, just in case if we have any stragglers or anything, they can just join in as they want. Darlene, so I see that you're on. I was wondering if you wanted to give a little introduction to yourself since you're new to our staff. That way our students can kind of put a face with a name and they might understand where to go when they need to.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Darlene, the new academic advisor here. I'm located in Nicholson. I'm still learning exactly who I'm going to be working with and when I'll be working with them, but I'm sure you'll all be hearing from me at some point or another.
Thank you. And will you be working specifically with nursing education and health sciences, or are you kind of across all spectrums?
So everyone except nursing. Nursing has their own advisor.
Okay.
So I'll be with education, nuke med, psychology. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. How are you adjusting and kind of fitting in?
It's going all right. You know, it's weird. You know, I came to Robert Morris, so it's definitely strange to be on campus and not have nearly as many people. But it's 2020 for you, so
Right. Good point.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions for Darlene, we can send, would you be okay if we sent your email out, or you can even say what your email is?
Sure, of course. My email is sandridge@rmu.edu, SANDRIDGE. And if I don't know the answers to the questions yet, I will find them.
We're all working through that adjustment and kind of getting used to that transition as well. So you're not alone in that. We're all with you. Bree, did you happen to see Dr. Monda jump on at all?
I have not.
Okay.
I actually I might just text her really fast.
Okay, and ask her if she's good that we go ahead and kind of start into it.
Yeah. It just sent.
Okay, awesome. Hi to everyone who joined in a little bit later. We're going to give it about 2 more minutes or so before we begin into the presentation, just to accommodate any people who might be coming from class or joining in a little bit later. So just bear with us for a little bit longer.
We also wanted to let you guys know that throughout the presentation, if you do have questions, you can add them to the chat or you can wait until the end. Depending upon what you want to do, you can even write them down and then, you know, while you're thinking of them, and then we will address them at the end if that's all right with you guys.
And since we do have a lot more people than we're used to in attendance, which yay, for the questions, it might be easier if you're like, because we can see you. So if you just pop your hand up, that way we can kind of identify who to go to and run it that way. We'll give it a try. We'll see. Hi, Dr. Monda. You're muted.
Oh, hi there. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all. I'm sorry I'm a couple minutes late.
That's okay. So before you joined on, we had Darlene kind of go through who she is and what her role is here at RMU. So any students who might have questions or who are her advisees can put a face to a name. And she also provided her email address as well. So they
Great.
can get to know her. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and as people come in, you'll notice a few more names and little circles popping up, but welcome. Thank you all so much for joining. This is the highest attendance we've had for these, so kudos to everyone for joining. And as you all know, we'll be talking about how to find a practicum site, especially in general, how to find one, but then also with the restrictions of COVID and kind of how to approach it. So this will be our overview. We have Dr. Monda, who is a department head for psychology and health sciences. She'll be discussing some of the program expectations and requirements. And then Bree and I, we will be discussing, so Bree and I were students here at RMU for our undergraduate. So we went through the same process you guys are going through, and we understand how it can be a little frustrating or a little scary at first. So we're here to provide some insight and help you through that. But we'll talk about faculty mentors who are at your availability, how to kind of organize the information to find your site, how to find a site during COVID, self-assessment, how to network yourself, investigating potential sites, how to create your practicum to be your own experience, how to reach out to potential sites, how to foster a relationship, and then as Bree mentioned, we'll go into questions and additional resources available to you guys. Okay, so without further ado, Dr. Monda, would you like to lead us through some program requirements and expectations that our students can be looking forward to?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kari and Bree, for setting this up. So the practicum process it's a required class, and we usually recommend that students take the practicum in one of their last 3 semesters in the program. So you can take it in the summer before your senior year, or in the fall or the spring. And essentially what it's designed to do is to give you off-site experience outside the classroom to see how psychology is playing out in the real world. So for the practicum, it's 120 hours that's required at a site. So we ask students to explore what their career interests are and perhaps find a site that it's in line with a population or a type of organization that you may see yourself wanting to work with in the future. And so students will contact potential sites to see if they have available interns positions. The internships can be either paid or unpaid. So, you know, in our world in psychology, a lot of them are unpaid. So that's kind of what the expectation is. And if you find a paid one, then that's like the icing on the cake. But, you know, different organizations will have different structures for how they have interns. Some are formalized positions, so they may advertise for an intern. Other places may be contacting someone and saying, hey, I'm a student at Robert Morris. I'm a psychology major. This is what I'm interested in doing. And would you have any internship experiences available? So, you know, as Kari mentioned, that process can be kind of daunting, and where do you start with that? So that's really the purpose of what today's webinar is about, is to give you some tips and teach you how to start that process. So once you've found a site that's with your interest and you've contacted them, the next step then would be to contact a faculty mentor here at RMU. So the practicum experience is set up a little different than a typical class. You're not going to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday to your practicum class with Dr. Wheeler. It's going to be more of an independent study. So you're going to have a faculty mentor that's a full-time faculty member to oversee the academic components of the practicum. So that might be meeting with your faculty advisor. You would meet maybe you would schedule a couple times a semester. My practicum students, especially right now, we're talking remotely through email. I have them send me weekly journals. And if there's an issue, we may do a Google Meet like this to touch base and talk about challenges that they're experiencing, or, the things that they find really interesting. So every faculty member structures their practicum, the academic components, a little bit differently. But you would choose a faculty mentor, which can be any of the full-time faculty members. So Dr. Paul, Dr. Wheeler, Dr. Pandit, or myself. And once you've identified and verbally got your commitment from your site, and you've chosen a faculty advisor, and they say that they'll oversee your practicum, then you would come to me as the department head to get signed up for the paperwork. So we do have an application, and it requires a couple different things. So you'd fill out an application form. You'd include a copy of your check sheet, your resume, and a brief job description. So just a paragraph describing what the site is, why you chose it, and potentially what you would be doing there. So what kind of things have you discussed with the site that this job or this internship would entail? And so registering for the practicum is a little bit different than signing up for other classes. We actually sign you up as an independent study. So there's a specific form. Once your practicum application's been approved from the administrative end, then we get you registered for that class. So the practicum and the thesis, for anyone that also might be doing a thesis at some point, you would sign up, instead of signing up through Century like your other classes, you would sign up through the department head. Yeah, so I think that's the overall gist of the program requirements and expectations. And really the goal is to let you try out something that you think you may want to do. Some people get into the practicum and they're like, oh my gosh, that was exactly the group I wanted to work with. It was awesome. I made connections. I think maybe I might have a job that comes out of it. And that's where I want to go to grad school. Other people may get into it and be like, I thought I wanted to work with kids, but you know what? The young ones just weren't for me. I think I want to work with individuals who are a little bit older. Next time, I think maybe if you want to try another experience, do another internship somewhere and get experience working with adults. So it really gives you an opportunity to try something out while you're still in school. I always talk about it as being kind of like it gives you a foot in the door, and to help maybe develop some connections with resources that can help you figure out what your next step is after you graduate. No, go ahead.
So as Dr. Monda mentioned, we have faculty mentors or advisors, and those are our full-time staff. So Dr. Monda, Dr. Pandit, Dr. Paul, and Dr. Wheeler. And just listed here, you can see the main areas that they kind of work with or they specialize in. So if you have an interest in sports psychology, maybe reaching out to Dr. Monda and going through the steps that she addressed, like, this is the site I'm looking at, this is my interest, can we set up a time to talk? So this is a really good starting point to kind of identify who you might want to be your faculty advisor or mentor.
So the next part of it that we are going to discuss is like the organization of information. So basically all the things that you need before contacting a site or just to kind of get together in general. The first being a self-assessment to kind of look through your skills and competencies or areas that you find interesting and to kind of understand who you are before going in and trying to find a practicum. Exploring and understanding your interests. We can do that through the self-assessment or just like in general, asking yourself some questions. Determining your practicum objectives and focus area. So what do you want to get out of it? Like, what do you want to gain from this experience? What do you want to learn? How do you want to like talk about it or go about it? Having a current resume or CV that kind of reflects your skill set. So what have you learned? What groups are you in? What's your GPA? Different things like that. Writing samples or personal statements. This is a great way to kind of identify your objectives. So it's a great way for the practicum site to understand who you are in written form. So if they can't get a phone call with you or they can't get an interview with you yet, this is a great way to kind of put out who you are. Creating a network or contact list for your practicum search. So with doing that, you can kind of list your faculty, your academic advisors, peers. It's a good way to kind of figure out what sites are available to you. Scheduling a meeting with your psychology practicum mentors to discuss things like your self-assessment and site interest. And that would actually be Kari and I for this time being, so we'll put that at the end. But for assistance in the development of your resume, your CV, your writing samples, the Center for Student Success and Personal Development is always available to you for interest in sites and kind of looking at who you are and developing that site. You can talk to Kari and I. So the big question that probably a lot of you are asking is like finding a site during COVID. So we know that this is a very stressful time, and even Kari and I have gone through this in our graduate studies. It's a little different for us from undergrad, but we can relate because of grad school. But a big thing during COVID to focus on is finding your social media presence. LinkedIn, Handshake, if you guys don't have those profiles already, please set one up. Make sure you have a really professional profile. Make sure that you're able to really know who you are and put out who you are with resumes and things like that. Prepare for virtual and phone interviews. A good way to do this is kind of just, sitting in front of a computer screen and like figuring out questions that you may have, or, being able to speak clearly, find rooms that are available and good for you to do these things in if it's virtual. Explore remote work opportunities. So there's a lot of things that you can actually do, like practicing like phone calls. Like I know telehealth is a big thing in our field at the moment. And so maybe like finding remote work through that. Attending virtual career fairs and networking opportunities. All the time, organizations in our profession are holding these presentations that talk about this and kind of can help you figure out avenues that you want to work in. Finding an interim job that can improve your skills and qualifications, that helps. So in our job, like when you're doing a practicum site, communication is key, like learning to do that in a job that you could probably find during COVID. Increase your marketability with skills, volunteer experiences, certifications, or trainings. Create your own virtual internship. So pitching having the initiative to create something like this really can promote who you are and how determined you are to do it. So you can stand out to an employer when you have those type of situations. Micro internships are like short-term project-based assignments. I did find this website that kind of walks you through internships that are remote. So we can send that link out to you guys later, but I think that was a really cool site to look at. Next, we're kind of going to talk about our self-assessment. So these are some questions that you can ask yourself to kind of understand who you are, the population you want to work with, the supervision that you might want to have, and basically just who you are as a person. So what are the practicum requirements of the program? So Dr. Monda kind of already talked about that, but you look into that and you can compare, like, does this site fit my requirements? The skills and competencies that you have. So kind of look through, like, are you really good at communicating? Are you good with computer skills? Like, what kind of things do you possess? What are your interests? So like patient demographics, supervision demographics, area of psychology that you want to work in. What is important to me in the work setting? So I think this is kind of cool too to think about when looking at a practicum site. Functions. So skill building, direct observation, assisting with job-related tasks, networking. Do those all kind of fall into that practicum site? Are they important to you? What level of supervision do you want? So do you want it to be more direct, indirect supervision? Do you fall somewhere in the middle? That type of thing. The level of competency of your supervisor. So like what kind of stuff do they kind of look at or get into? What types of organizational missions and goals that interest you? So like what is the overall outcome that you want to have and what do you want to get from this internship? So then talking about how it fits into your schedule. How far do you want to travel? How many hours can you put towards it? Is it a close location? Is it further away? And then kind of just talking about how you want to grow professionally. So will this practicum site help you develop who you want to become in the future? So kind of looking at your overall goals and who you want to become. Next, we'll talk about networking. So some things to do with this is like finding local resources, RMU faculty, your peers, and then once you kind of start locating those resources and identifying who they are, you can then ask for like relevant information for various practicum sites. even referrals. If some professors kind of have contacts with some potential sites, you can ask them, hey, may I have their contact information? Can you refer me to them? That kind of thing. And then contacting that network of people, learning about the organization ahead of time. So before even going in, you understand what that organization is about and how you can kind of promote that or emphasize what their mission is. Asking questions. So being able to prepare intelligent questions to ask them when you do get that interview, and then ask for a recommendation or a reference from the contact that you have.
Thanks, Bree. In addition to when we were talking about Handshake and LinkedIn, if you guys have questions about that or you want to walk through it together, please don't hesitate to contact Bree and I as well. That's something that we would be more than happy to assist you with. But kind of going on, so Bree mentioned looking into your sites and gathering more information on them. So a lot of the times a good starting point is like, who do you want to work with? Do you want to work with athletes? Do you want to work with older population? Do you want to work with cancer patients? There are so many spectrums and like populations that you can work with. So really identifying that and you like looking at that when you're looking for sites is really important because it allows you to look at, like Dr. Monda mentioned earlier, this might be a population you really are enthusiastic about. And during your practicum, you might find out, okay, I do want to continue to work with this population, or maybe I want to try something else. So that's kind of the good starting point when looking for a site. So look at the profile, the people that are at the facility. So for the most part on websites, they have little drop downs where it says, contact us or learn more about us, where you can see the employees that are there. So you can get a sense of, does this person have the job that I would want to have? And it looks also on websites, you can look for their mission statements. And basically a mission statement is the purpose of the site you're looking at or the programs that they offer. And that can be a really good component to look at as well when you're gathering information about where you might want to do your practicum at. And kind of continuing on with that, looking at the questions that are listed below on the slide, these are really good questions to ask yourself. Does it fit your program requirements? Does it fit your interests? That goes back to looking at, this is the population I want to work with, this is the area I want to work in. Does your supervisor or do people at that site have a job you would potentially see yourself working at? Does it fit the kind of hours that you want? So Dr. Monda mentioned it's 120 hours. So will the site be able to accommodate that with you and allow you to gain the experience that you're wanting to gain? Does it fit into your schedule? Everything is super busy in undergrad and it will continue on. So really finding a site that is willing to work with you is a component as well to take into consideration. Does it satisfy your needs as a learner? I know personally for me, I constantly want to learn more, and where I did my practicum, it allowed me to do that after I kind of like took that initiative to make it my own. And then does it help accomplish our goals? As Bree mentioned, everyone has a goal at some point. I mean, you're in college to continue to pursue that goal. So really evaluating like, what's my ultimate end goal? And finding sites that kind of fit into that as well. So I mentioned creating your own experience. This is a opportunity that our students are like, it's wonderful to have because it really does allow you to say, I have X amount of time to do this. What do I want to get from it? Dr. Monda, is it okay if I tell them like my own personal experience with it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I did my practicum at the Summit Academy. And I was initially brought on as a drug and alcohol intern. It was about a month in where all I was really doing was filing, kind of reading through assessments and stuff, which is important and you need to know how to do, but it wasn't really what I was expecting. So I took it upon myself to go to the mental health counselor wing that is there. And I asked them if I'd be able to shadow them and sit in with them during their group sessions, their individual sessions. And they were more than willing to have me like shadow them. So sometimes it does take that little like push, and it might be a little uncomfortable at first, but I was able to create my own experience. And that's actually how I ended up wanting to pursue my master's in counseling. It's from my experience at my undergrad practicum. So that's something to always keep in the back of your mind. Like if it's not what you might want, is there something that you can do to change that? But also like knowing you have resources. So your faculty advisor, Bree, and I, using those to help bounce ideas off of like, how can I make this my own? So it kind of goes into the creating goals with your supervisor or your mentors and advisors. And then using those resources, I cannot stress that enough. We are here to help you and we want to help you. So please don't hesitate to reach out, email, anything. We're here. Another really good component or task, I guess you would want to call it, is reaching out to other professionals who you think might have good insight. So if you are wanting to gain experience in addictions, maybe doing a quick Google search like addiction centers near me, that will bring you up with a bunch of centers, but also people associated with those centers. So first, it might be a good idea to get an idea of what addictions is before saying, okay, that's the site that I want to be at. But then also if you reach out to that site and make that initial contact with someone, that could also be a good indicator for them, like, oh, this is a student who contacted me before, and now they're interested in a practicum. So it's kind of like paving that bridge to help create connections. And then sorry, doing supplemental information, reading up on a certain population you think might be of interest to you, asking your advisors for other information they might have. Basically anything that you can better yourself on and gain more knowledge on will help you allow like your own experience to be created.
I would also kind of like to talk a little bit about my experience. So in undergrad, I was a clinical sports psych major, and my original site actually fell through. I was supposed to work in a geriatric hospital, which was interesting because I wasn't even sure why I got into that population, or I looked into that site. And then I actually ended up finding a placement where I observed a trauma psychologist who also was a professor and did a couple things in like the criminal sense too. But I actually learned a lot of stuff just from going and observing her. I learned that I can use the trauma aspect that she kind of talked about and the way that I learned the stuff that she was like doing and apply it to my sport interest. So I realized that trauma can also occur in sport. You have a crazy injury and that can be traumatic for people. So you can apply like the different things or experiences that you have and try to fit it in. So that's another way you can kind of create your own experience. I also would like to kind of talk about my graduate internship that I will be going to. It's in drug and alcohol, and kind of how that can fit into my interest in sport and even clinical is the fact that athletes also struggle with drug and alcohol. It's a part of like what happens. And so finding various experiences that kind of can go around the population that you want. So if you say you want to work with children, maybe getting experiences in different atmospheres, in school, in a private practice, different things like that can kind of really help create your own experience too. Thanks for letting me add that.
Can I chime in? Actually, this is a great kind of conversation that we're having. I want to touch base on something that both Kari and Bree said, is that whether it's because of COVID or just because you're an undergrad, it sometimes can be frustrating for students searching for a site because there's some kind of limitation. And so we can shape our expectations. And as Bree talked about, you may find that the site that you end up choosing for your practicum isn't exactly what you wanted, or it wasn't specifically with the population that you thought. But I think what we can find is that there's lessons that we can learn in different sites that we can apply. So for Bree, she realized that, wait a minute, trauma is going to impact everyone, and athletes just have very sport specific trauma, right? Think about being in COVID and you're not allowed to play your sport anymore, but your identity is wrapped around that. How are you going to handle that? Maybe that was your senior year and you lost your season. So there's ways to learn from different populations to apply to what you want to do. So especially with COVID, the perfect site may not be available right now. And so that's our job, is to kind of think and work with you guys to be creative, to find experiences that could be interesting. Maybe you end up at a site with a population you never thought you'd work with and you fall in love with it. So we can help you with that. And I just want to encourage you guys to have an open mind and don't get discouraged by that process, because I think it's taking people longer to find those sites. And also they might not be specifically the exact experience that you wanted to get at this point. So, but there's ways to do that. So with our sports psych students, for example, since that's my area of interest, we actually, in addition to the hours required at an outside organization, we do some extra activities. And one of them is kind of what Kari talked about, which is contacting, a sports psych professional. I use my network of colleagues. I connect you with someone and you do an informational interview. So in sports psych, sometimes it's hard to get a 120-hour internship with a sports psychology consultant and a sports psychologist because there's just very few of them. But people are more willing to do like a 30-minute phone interview with you and talk about their job and talk about how they got into it. And that can be really valuable. So say you want to go into a clinical career, but as an undergrad, you can't do direct counseling because you don't have that experience yet or that competence or a license. Okay, well, maybe we can find someone that has the job that you like or works with the population that you want. And part of your hours could be interviewing them and contacting them, introducing yourself and talking to them about their career path and how they got there and what they do. So, there's creative ways that we can mold your experience through the practicum as well. So if you work with your faculty mentor and kind of share with them what you're hoping to get out of it, I think there's ways to construct really effective experiences to help give you the experience that we want you to have walking out of RMU.
That's a really good point. I forgot about the extra, because that's what I did in my undergrad as well. I contacted Dr. Abrams. He had given me his, So that's a really good resource, as well as Dr. Monda pointed out. So wow, sorry guys. Contacting the potential sites. In the last semester prior to when you want to complete your practicum site, that's when we recommend starting to reach out. So if you want to do it in the summer, in the spring, start looking around and making that initial contact, because like I mentioned with the last slide, it puts a name to a face, but then it's not like you're just showing up. They know your name, they know your interests, and they know why you're contacting them. So emailing and calling, you might feel annoying, but it's okay to be persistent. We talk about making that initial contact, which could be an email, and then maybe follow up with a call a week later or so, and then follow up with an email and a phone call. And Dr. Monda had mentioned a while ago when we were talking about this presentation that before COVID, it would be okay to go in with your resume and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, here's my resume," after you had sent that initial email. But with COVID, that might not be the best thing to do right now. So email and calling are going to be the best forms. but even email, maybe a little bit more so than calling, just because a lot of people are working remotely still. So they will probably be more accessible via email. And when you're emailing them, make sure to include your resume and a cover letter and explain to them, you know, my name's Kari Campbell. I'm a junior at Robert Morris University. I'm looking to do an internship or practicum with your organization. Would we be able to set up a time to have a phone call and talk about my requirements, what I can offer you, and maybe why I want to be there?
Kari, if I could just jump in there. So Kari mentioned attaching your resume and in a cover letter, and that's great advice, because then they can just look really quick to see, you know, is this person qualified, or do they have experiences that are in line with our organization. But if you guys need a cover letter, our department actually has one that it's a letter written to a potential supervisor that outlines some of the requirements. So, because they want to know, you know, how many hours are required of you, what kind of stuff are you allowed to do or not do? What are the expectations for them? So that letter is available. And I always think that's helpful to attach with your initial contact. So when you get to the point of being registered for the class, just ask your faculty mentor for that. Or actually, you can't be registered for the class when you're looking for a site. So prior to that, feel free to reach out to the faculty members or our Practicum mentors here, and they'll connect you with a copy of that letter.
Kari, may I add something too?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So on top of that, the personal statement that we talked about also allows them to to attach that to the email, allows them to see who you are before, like, you know, they can read your resume, they can look at your cover letter, but then they also get a sense of who you are as a person in that personal statement. And one more thing, with the email and calling, also maybe message them on LinkedIn or on Handshake, because they can have the picture of your profile. They can look at your profile. They can have all of that information, but then they're putting a face to a name over Handshake or LinkedIn. Thank you, Kari.
Right. That's a really good point, Bree. LinkedIn is, I think, in the past 6 months has really seen an uphill, because that's how a lot of people are making their contact. That's how a lot of people are communicating and staying up to date with potential jobs, potential internships. There's actually a really cool feature on LinkedIn where you're able to say searching for psychology practicum experience. So potential viewers see that and they're like, oh, okay. And you might have someone reach out to you, or you might be able to find someone or a facility that piques your interest. So that's a really good point, Bree. Another thing is asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you want to know what your supervisor's favorite part of their job is, don't be afraid to ask them. You're there to learn, and they understand you're there to learn. So they want to help you. They want to make sure you're gaining the most knowledge that you can from that. And the only way you'll be able to do so is by asking questions. So prior to the interview, compile a list of questions that you might have, like, what's the population that you work with? Do you do individual groups? Do you do, or not individual groups, individual counseling? Do you do forensic interviewing? Do you do just assessments? So there's a lot of different questions that you can ask them, and kind of thinking of those before the interview allows you to go in with a game plan almost. And that can also be calming a little bit, because you know what you want to ask rather than being a fish out of water, like, oh, I don't know what questions. This allows you to go in a little more prepared, and hopefully can help calm you down a little bit, because interviews can be kind of scary at first. And then going back to your self-assessment that Bree had mentioned earlier, identifying similarities between sites and even the person that you make direct contact with, and your own values or your own goals for the site. Finding parallels between the two and making those connections is also really important when you're searching for a site, but then also when you're contacting the site. And then fostering the relationship. Once you find the site, it's really important to make sure that you're presenting yourself as a professional, but then also allowing yourself to have that personal touch as well. Because while they know you from your cover letter, your personal statement, your resume, that's only the initial point. So once you do find the site, making sure that you take the time to create the relationship, get to know your front desk attendant, or even with your supervisor, making sure that you build that relationship, because down the road, like Dr. Monda had mentioned, practicum sites could potentially end up in a job position for you. So being able to have that strong foundation and that strong relationship, it can really set you up for the future and make the most of every opportunity. I know for myself, I had trainings that were offered. Take those trainings. That's something you can list on your resume or your CV as you continue on in your professional development. List those trainings. If they say, hey, do you want to work on this project with me? Take them up on that. Those are all things that you can utilize, in the moment, but then also down the road. A big one is don't take the site or the supervision for granted. Making sure to show how grateful and thankful you are to be in that position really means a lot to your program or the site as well. So if you show that you want to be there, you have the motivation to be there, you want to make sure that you're gaining the most that you can from this, make sure to show that. And that can be I'll go run this somewhere, or can I help you with anything? Really offering that open-handedness, hi, I'm here, I want to learn. How can I help you? What can we do to make this go a lot smoother? And so your site can see how motivated and how much it means to you, but then also that way you can work on developing those skills as well.
So do any of you guys have any questions? You can add it in the chat, or you can even just raise your hand and you can ask us right now.
Who here is getting close to practicum? Just do a raise a hand or. Okay, so there's a few of you that are close to that. Molly, did you have a question? I saw you had to raise a hand. Go ahead.
Yes. So I wanted to know if there's, if you guys noticed any internships that don't qualify for the practicum.
So are there internships that don't meet the requirements?
Yeah.
And what does those look like?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there have in the past, but frankly, we're fairly flexible, especially with undergrads. So those with clinical interests that go into grad school, their internship experience has to be really structured. They have to have specific number of contact hours. They have to be doing specific tasks and things. But at the undergrad level, it's pretty flexible. And because people have various interests, some people on this call, and they may be interested more in an HR or industrial organizational. Some of you may like more counseling stuff. Some of our sport majors, they want to go into coaching. So the jobs can be so different. We really don't try to exclude very much. What I think from our end that would exclude a site would be one, if we felt like the experience wouldn't be beneficial for you. So if you were in a situation where they just wanted you to do filing and you were just kind of sit around and get coffee for people, we don't want you to be in that situation because that's not going to be professionally helpful. So we're kind of screening for things like that to make sure that what they're telling you is something that would be professionally useful. The other thing too is that we would look for a site that if you were going to be doing things that maybe we felt like they were outside of your competence level. So there was a person, I think, that had a potential site and it was good, but they pretty much wanted them to be a counselor working with kids that had trauma in their background and actually be doing counseling. And I think I had to step in there and say, while we want you to observe that stuff, we have to be, careful that we don't put you in a situation where it's too much for you, that you wouldn't know what to do. And so if there's a supervisor that's kind of working with you, you can assist, but we wouldn't want you to be like a full counselor. And frankly, that's not even legal to have you doing something like that. So I think those are really the situations that we're looking for. But for the most part, it's pretty flexible.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Ava. She's a senior and she's going to be graduating in the summer of 2021. Dr. Wheeler is her advisor, and he mentioned completing the practicum over the summer. The question is, will she be able to complete that during that time and still graduate at the end of summer?
Okay, so let me read Ava's question. So Ava, you are going to be graduating in the summer. And so will you be able to complete it during that time and still graduate at the end of the summer? Yes. So in that situation, Ava, so graduation, like the people who are qualified for graduation, it's at the end of August. So your practicum, the nice thing about the practicum is that sometimes with the site, it may take you a couple weeks into a semester to get things settled and finalize and get registered for the class. So it's a little bit more flexible than the typical standard start date for a semester. But most people can finish it over the course of the summer and graduate by August. If there was an issue, though, say with COVID, things got delayed and you weren't able to get your 120 hours, but you were registered for the class over the summer, that was the situation maybe where we'd talk about an incomplete. Students can still graduate with I think it's up to 6 credits left. So say you had an incomplete and you still didn't have a grade for the practicum, you technically could still graduate. And then when you finish the course, you would get a grade for it. So it won't affect your graduation status.
So Madeline has a question. She wants to know if she can complete a practicum over the summer.
Yes, you can. So for students, sometimes that works out really well. Maybe because you're not taking as many classes, or some people go home and just have more access to be able to go to different sites at that time. So the one thing with the summer practicum that is important to know, that you have to pay separately for that, and that financial aid doesn't apply during the summer. So taking a class in the summertime is often out of pocket, which is fine for many people as long as they can plan for it ahead of time. So if you are going to do it over the summer, just kind of keep that in mind, that financially that's not going to be covered by financial aid.
May I also add on to that? I did my practicum during the summer, mainly because I was an athlete and I was constantly having practice and, had games and such during the spring. And so I found that doing it in the summer was actually really beneficial. I felt that I could really focus on it. I didn't have other classes to worry about, and that I could go in, give my full attention to everything that was going on at the practicum site, and it was easier for me. So I liked it. I don't know about anyone else and their experiences, but I definitely think that it's cool. Our next question is from Madison. Do you have any specific recommendations for networking opportunities at RMU besides our academic advisor?
So I actually think any of your professors that you have, that's a great point as well. Because while your academic advisors have a lot of contacts, so do your professors, and everybody has different interests. So if you know a professor has a certain interest of yours, going to them and saying, hey, I was wondering if you happen to know anyone that might be willing to have a discussion with me, or I can kind of pick their brain about how they went about finding what they want to do. So I think really utilizing your professors as other networking opportunities is helpful.
Yeah, I agree, Kari, because a lot of our part-time faculty who are teaching for us have full-time jobs out in the field. So while they're teaching, they're also really connected into, the workforce out there. So that's a good resource.
I would also suggest looking at the Benjamin Rush Center. So they actually have lists and contacts for internships and potential practicum sites, contacts, networks. They're really good at doing that stuff. And I would also suggest so say you're a sport psychology major, maybe even talking to some of the coaches on campus. Like we have 16 different sports, maybe talking to them. I would also suggest looking at the counseling center. If you're into maybe some clinical or like general psych, you can kind of talk to them about it. Or if you're interested in counseling, they may have some really good resources that can kind of, put out there.
Yeah. And you know what, too, I think, in the COVID world, we used to have a lot more in-person kind of meetings. We had Psych Club. We used to do something called the the mocktail event, where we would invite different professionals from the field to come in. We do mock interviews, we do a panel. And so this has changed a little bit in the networking experiences for students. But something that I've noticed is a lot of professional organizations are putting on webinars like this where you can connect. So in the sports psych world, there's a number of them that I usually send them out to the sports psych. If you're in the sports psych concentration, I'll send them out to you to join into a webinar. And sometimes they have networking experience or opportunities connected to that. So that's always a good way to do it, is to figure out, are there professional organizations in the field that you're interested in, going to their website, and there's always kind of free webinars now that are going on that you could jump on and maybe meet some people or learn about some different people in your community. I think at RMU specifically, I think the Psych Club and Psych-Chi are starting to figure out how to get active again. And so maybe if you're really interested in networking, working together, finding some other students who are motivated like yourself, maybe someone on this call, to set up some kind of event where you want to invite some people and do a networking thing. So if you have an interest like that, Dr. Wheeler's the advisor for the Psych Club, Dr. Paul, the Psych-Chi, and me as the department head. If you have an idea that's something that you'd like to see or you'd like us to do, we can do that. So I know Bree and Kari are always interested in putting together resources for our students. So if you think something like that would be useful and you feel like you want to connect, maybe you'd be willing to help spearhead that with one of our other people.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. We
Okay.
just got one.
Cool. So Sultan is graduating in the fall of 2021 and is an international undergraduate student. Is there any additional things that they need to do when applying for the practicum?
So my understanding, Sultan, is that the one thing that you have to take into account as an international student is that you can't have a paid position. So my understanding is that it has to be for course credit and unpaid. I would also check in with the Center for Global Engagement once you're prior to looking for a site to get a sense from them if there's anything else that you have to take into account. Beyond that, I think everything else is just, finding a site that's the right fit for you. But I appreciate you thinking about that, and we'll work with you as an international student to help meet any requirements that are necessary relating to the visa.
So are there any other questions that we haven't answered that you guys would like to ask before we move on to the resources? Dr. Monda, is there anything else that you would like to add?
You may actually talk about this when we get to resources, but I just wanted to tell everyone that our Practicum mentors actually have a running list of some potential sites where RMU students have gone in the past. And some of them are local and some of them may be, closer to their home. But I think just seeing the name of list or the name of sites or the different categories of places can be helpful to give you a starting point. Oh, that's really cool. Someone did their practicum at a rec center because they want to look at program development. I never really thought about that. I want to work with kids. I never thought that there might be jobs there. Let me see if there's something like that in my community. So that list is available. And so our Practicum mentors can help you sort through and maybe identify some sites that they would recommend for you.
Kari, is there anything that you would like to add?
Just reach out. If you guys do have any questions, even after this webinar, if you have questions that pop into your head, please feel free to email us. We'll get back to you.
Okay, so like Dr. Monda said, we are the Practicum mentors, and we will gladly help you with the list, with different self-assessments, things that you guys want to touch on. We are always available for you. Email us. You can contact us anytime. I know I'm available in person on Mondays. You can come and we can set something up if you're talking with me, and then Kari's there on Tuesdays. But we're almost available all the time. Some other resources that are available on campus would be the Career and Professional Development Center. There's the list of their emails, phone numbers, location, hours of operation, as well as the Center for Student Success and Personal Development. So the internship and anything relating to internship practicum will come from the Career and Professional Development Center. Anything that has to do with your CV, your resume, your personal statement, they can help you with that at the Center for Student Success and Personal Development. Also, the Writing Center is available to you on campus. So there's that. I'm going to stop presenting. We are so grateful that you guys are all here, and we're really thankful that we got to do this and you guys got to have all these questions. So we just wanted to kind of close and summarize in a sense that, practicum, it's going to be frustrating, and just kind of keep in mind that we're going to get through this, and that you have resources, you have a support system. We're going to be posting this too. So if you want to circle back on our YouTube channel and look at it again and be like, okay, I can go through this, it'll be available to you. But we are so grateful that you were able to come and attend with us. And if you have any further questions, you can easily reach out to us via email. We would be more than happy to answer. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day. Oh, you're welcome, Maxine. Good to see you.
Aww.
Tyler, are you still on there? It may be in the background and he's not there.
Cool.
Okay. How do you feel like it went, guys?
Pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Oh, yes.